I'd been saving for her ring. I really thought she was the one. Apparently, she didn't feel the same way about me. At least she spared me the embarrassment of a proposal rejection, or worse. Still, after I got off work on the Friday after, I grabbed my tent and hiking gear and headed south. There's a ridge that overlooks a bend in the Ohio River. It would have been the perfect spot. I can't tell you why I decided to go up there. I just felt compelled to, like doing so would provide some catharsis or something. After hiking a mile and a half through the valley and up to the top of the ridge, I hung my canteen on a thin branch of an old maple tree and went to work making camp. I set up my tent, rounded up some kindling, and started a campfire, then sipped on a bottle of beer as the setting sun slashed orange and red across the western sky above the river. Just before full dark set in, something strange happened that left me feeling more than a little uneasy. I turned on a podcast, one where a couple comedians make fun of crappy movies, but just a few minutes into it, I started getting interference like you would on an old radio, which didn't make sense because I was using my phone. I wasn't even streaming it. I'd already downloaded the episodes earlier in the day. At first it was just fuzz and static, but then voices started coming through. They weren't speaking a language I understood, but the harshness of their tones sent a shiver down my spine. I clicked on my flashlight and shone it in a circle around me, doing a quick survey of the valley beneath me on one side and the cliff leading to the river below me on the other. There were no signs of anyone else. Whatever it was picking up had to be from far away. Eventually I stopped the podcast and restarted my phone. That seemed to fix the issue as I was able to finish the episode without any more problems. Still, the whole event left me with goosebumps as I crawled into my tent. I don't know how long I'd been sleeping. All I know is that I woke up to the strong smell of smoke. I jolted to a seated position, fearing my campfire had somehow escaped its confines. But when I unzipped my tent and poked my head out, I discovered the opposite. My campfire was nothing but embers and coals. Yet the smoke smell grew stronger, before a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence of the night. My heart leaped into my throat. Retreating back into my tent, I grabbed my phone and my hunting knife, then hurried back outside to see if I could figure out what was going on. There was more screaming coming from behind me, but also a high-pitched whooping sound, almost like an animal calling, along with a strange glow. I unlocked my phone, preparing to call 911 when I rounded the corner of my tent and was met by something that left me completely disoriented. The once lush valley I'd hiked through wasn't there, having been replaced by a series of dome-shaped dwellings, a village, and most of it was on fire with pillars of smoke rising into the night sky. Shadowy figures darted here and there between the burning homes, brandishing clubs and spears. A small boy attempted to defend his home from the attackers but was cut down, the grotesque thud of the war club splitting his skull audible even at my distance. I froze in place, transfixed by the visceral horror of it. What I was witnessing couldn't be explained, and I felt this immense pain in my temples as my brain tried to make sense of it. I'd played violent video games with HD graphics, watched realistic war movies, but none of that compared to what was unfolding in the valley below. It was a massacre, and I was helpless. My hands began to shake. People were being slaughtered while others were dragged away. Two of the attackers wrestled an elderly man to the ground and with a quick slice of a blade peeled away his scalp. I gulped down a breath. Why was I seeing this terrible thing? Why? My fixation was broken by the sound of fast footfalls stamping up the ridge toward me. A woman stepped out of the brush, frightened and alone. Further down the ridge, a group of attackers pursued her. Her gaze found the cliff leading to the river and her eyes widened. That would be her path to freedom. But then she saw me, and panic seized her. "No, no, no!" I cried, flashing my palms. "I won't hurt you!" It was no use. She couldn't understand me. Likely believing me to be one of the attacking tribe, she doubled back right into the path of her pursuers. Then one of them saw me. His eyes narrowed before he gestured and said something to one of his companions. The two of them peeled off from the pursuit of the woman, climbing the ridge in my direction. I didn't hesitate. I turned and sprinted for the cliff. I don't know which one of them fired it, but an arrow zipped by my head, striking a maple tree. Striving with all my might, I reached the cliff and leapt, plunging feet first into the cool water. I stayed under and let the current carry me for a moment in hopes of evading them before I finally emerged. When I did, All was calm. The sky was clear and the woods silent. No smoke, no screams. I swam to the riverbank and waited there for a good bit before I found a path back up to the overlook. Once there, I was greeted by the soft glowing remnants of my campfire. My tent was undisturbed, and to my astonishment, the valley was lush and green once again. I packed up my things at first light the next morning, but as I was about to leave, something dawned on me. Pulling out my hunting knife, I went to the maple tree where I'd hung my canteen when I arrived. I plunged the point of the blade into the bark beneath a thin branch, and after digging for a time, popped something out. An arrowhead. Suddenly, the perfect spot didn't feel so perfect anymore. It felt like I was alone on a deserted island, but of course I wasn't. There were 8 other Boy Scouts with me and 3 adults. But when you're the only one awake on a literal island and you start hearing strange things in the dark, well, you get my point. I was only 11 and my troop was camping on an island in the Dale Hollow Reservoir on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. It was an annual weekend trip for the Scouts, but it was my first time, and I was super excited about it. The thought of camping on an island with water between me and the rest of civilization felt like an adventure, and my dad, who was stationed in Iraq at the time, had camped on that same island as a kid, which added to my excitement. It was like we'd be camping together, and the thought of that made me not miss him so much. At first, things were just as I imagined they would be. We laid out our sleeping bags, took a hike around the island, roasted hot dogs and s'mores over the fire, and listened to our scoutmaster tell stories. Most of them were funny, but there was a kind of scary one. He told us that when the Army Corps of Engineers were preparing to flood the land that would become the lake, they found 12 corpses buried in unmarked graves on a mountainside. He said there was no way to identify the bodies or who put them there, but the authorities believed they were connected to bootlegging or illegal alcohol during the Prohibition. I didn't even know what that meant at the time, and I didn't care to ask. I was more focused on the next part of the story. My scoutmaster then added a detail that shivered me to the bone. It was true that the authorities only found 12 bodies, but what they didn't report in the newspapers was that there were actually 13 graves, which means, he said, that whoever buried the 12 bodies was still out there and likely looking for someone to fill the 13th grave. Now, I must admit that's some Scooby-Doo logic, but that didn't stop it from infiltrating my imagination or change what I experienced later that night. After laying my flashlight next to the pillow, I crawled into my sleeping bag a few feet away from my friend Joey. It wasn't 5 minutes later and Joey was snoring. He could fall asleep anywhere and sleep through anything. I envied him in that regard. On that night, I was the complete opposite. My ears registered every sound from the water gently lapping against the docks to an owl hooting somewhere in the distance. Normally, I would have found it relaxing, but with the specter of the empty 13th grave looming over my 11-year-old mind, my nerves felt like frayed wire. I stared at the pinpricks of stars in the night sky for a long time, until my ears registered something more frightening than the night sounds. Their absence. Complete silence. Like the whole island was suddenly underwater. Then, the sky darkened, as if someone pulled a curtain over it, shrouding me in blackness with the exception of the soft glow of the dying embers of the campfire. My flashlight lay inches from my face, but when I went to grab it, I was struck with the most terrifying sensation of all: utter helplessness. I couldn't move. I was completely paralyzed. Glued to the ground, panic washed over me. I wanted to scream. I tried to open my mouth. I imagined hands prying my jaws apart. Nothing worked. Then, I heard it. The whistling. It echoed softly across the lake. It was a sing-song melody, nonchalant but unnerving in a way that made my chest heave. Water splashed nearby, followed by slow footsteps heading in my direction. The whistling grew louder, the footsteps heavier. Eventually, the glow from the fire illuminated the figure of a man. His details slowly came into focus. He was large, with a wrinkled face and thick beard under a pair of rounded glasses. At first I thought he was hunchbacked, but as he closed in, I saw he was carrying something over his shoulder in a sack. Attached to his belt with a chain was a small shovel. It rattled with every step. Cha-chink, cha-chink, cha-chink. He plodded toward me, the embers of the fire casting devilish shadows across his face. My heart pounded, sweat beaded up on my forehead. He was so close, I could smell the lake on him. I swallowed hard. Cha-chink. He stopped at my side. A drop of lake water splashed on my cheek. The sack over his shoulder wriggled. He peered down at me, his free hand resting on his shovel. Unable to do anything else, I shuddered before he, flashing a set of sharpened yellow teeth, gave me a diabolical smirk and said, "I'll be seeing you, kid." Then, after chuckling to himself, he resumed whistling his tune and continued on. It wasn't until he was long gone that I could move again. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night, and when I told everyone about what I saw the next morning, no one believed me, insisting it was just a bad dream. Maybe it was. I don't know. It was a long time ago now, but I won't lie to you. Each night when I lay down for bed, I listened with dread for a whistle in the distance. Then, the sound of his shovel. Cha-chink, cha-chink, cha-chink. I'm author and teacher Sean McMurray, and that's my dog Bentley. Thanks for watching. God bless.